future, however, if you imagine going back over the last 150 years, which is about how far modern cancer research goes, if we go back over that period, very early on, they thought they knew most of it pretty quickly. And the more they found out, the more complex the whole process has become. And that's only added over time, that we now realise it's an unbelievably complex process. But the point is, we are getting there and treatments are improving. The biggest gains we've made comes back to what I was talking about, the corruption process in cancer, that we've now got treatments that you can just give a tablet every day, and in many cases the cancer is held in check and does not grow. And things like that we didn't have available all that long ago. So for me, what I don't want, what would be a horrible failure of me today for everyone here, is to believe and see cancer as being this terrible disease that's unmanageable. It's not. There are plenty of cases where we can get really, really good results, happy dogs, even if it's not forever, it's for a good period of time. You know, for many of our dogs, even if it's another year or two, when you're with your dog every day over that year, that's a long period of time. And if their quality of life is 100%, then you can't ask for any more than that, I think. So, just to finish off, I guess what I'd like to do is just entertain any questions. If anyone out there has any general cancer inquiries, if there's something specific about your dog, by all means come and grab me, but does anybody have any general questions about cancer they'd like worked on as a group?
Is there any point in using any of the natural medicine to help the immune system?
Okay. So the question was on alternative therapies, and specifically with boosting the immune system. The boosting the immune system, what research there is shows that general methods of boosting the immune system are largely a waste of time. That because of the corruption process, because essentially your body is helping the cancer grow, helping the immune system, strengthening it doesn't actually lead to a better response. So non-specific boosting the immune system, no. The bigger issue of alternative therapies is a huge question to answer quickly. I don't want to do a disservice by answering properly, but the bottom line is, I guess, what a specialist, I think, should be advising you on is what is known, meaning that if I've got good research that shows that acupuncture improves the quality of life or length of life, then I'll happily recommend it. If there's no research showing that, and it's just people saying, look, I reckon this is really good. What we do know from countless previous cases, shark cartilage would be an obvious fraud to expose, when people have vehemently argued for the success of certain things, until you get the research showing you there's no evidence for it. And so, from my point of view, I won't, in my consult room, recommend people go on alternative therapies, because we don't know if it works and we don't know the risks. There certainly are risks. In people it's better characterised. There's very large numbers of people that die directly from herbal remedies, for example. So, and even if it's safe in the sense that you know, something that can't have any risks at all, going on something to the exception of something else is a risk. So it's a difficult thing. I'm not saying that people shouldn't want to believe in something for working. So, for example, religion, there's no evidence that there is a God. And yet I'm going to have a hard time convincing anyone religious in the audience that there isn't one. Okay, so it's not for me to tell you you shouldn't believe in something, but I think it would be wrong for me in my consult room to tell you to do something that there is no evidence of benefit. So the bottom line is probably a third at least of my patients, I think, would be on some other unproven therapies. And for most of it, to be frank, we just hope that it doesn't interfere with what we know works and try and use it together. And the proportions are similar. On the human side, up to half of people with cancer will be on unproven therapies. There is a shockingly small amount of data on whether it actually interferes is the difficulty. So it would be nice to say, yes, you can be on that because it won't interfere with what we're doing. For the most part, we actually don't know if that's the case.
Dog creates its own vitamin C in its body?
Do dogs create their own vitamin C? Yes.
They do.
They do. So, which means by definition there's no such thing as vitamin C for a dog, because it's not a... I mean, the people, again, I mean, you'll get bored with this when you get onto one of my soapboxes, but the thing with vitamins are made into being some magical something. In essence, what a vitamin is something that was so plentiful in your natural diet that your body couldn't be bothered making it anymore over the process of evolution, that they're not difficult chemicals to make. Plenty of other species of other classes of animal and non-animals make their own. It's so much in your diet that if you're eating a decent diet, there's no need to. There's no point in wasting your DNA on something you're going to get access to. So for dogs with vitamin C specifically, they make their own. There's no need and no point. If you are using vitamin C in a dog, therefore, you've got to realise essentially you're using it as a drug, not as a supplement. You're not making sure they've got adequate levels. You're actually trying to change how their body works, which is fine, but that also brings in the risk of side effects. When you look at vitamins specifically with their effects on cancer, there's been a huge number of studies in people, less so in dogs. There's not one good study that shows any benefit from vitamin supplementation. There is one study that shows increased risk of lung cancer in people taking antioxidants. Vitamin A group is and there's also now 2 studies showing even omega-3 oils showing increased risk of prostate cancer in men. So things that you might think, well, that's just harmless, we'll just boost it, is actually potentially harmful. So for me, when it comes down to choices about vitamins, I actually don't recommend generally people give vitamin supplements. I recommend they focus more on making sure they're giving a very good, balanced diet as the better solution. Good question. Yes?
There's a lot of talk about the increased risk of cancer if you don't desex your dogs. Is that accurate or inaccurate? Because it seems to me that they're born with these gonads for a reason. Why should we take them away?
Okay, influence of sex hormones on cancer. You guys are actually talking at the national conference on this in about a month. So, yeah.
This is good practice.
Yes, I'll give you a rundown of my talk. So, if we go back a few decades, it was very important, I think, for dogs to be sterilised just because, certainly, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, the norm pretty much seemed to me, dogs were just all around. You know, you just let your dog out the front to go for some self-exercise, and they'd come back in that night. And I'm sure that wasn't across the board, but it seemed to me that sort of behaviour was much more common then than it is now. So to have dogs sterilised was probably far more important for just controls. And given that we've got council representation here, I've got to be careful what I say, but I think it was more important then. Early studies. The biggest study that you'll see cited today was several decades ago looking at breast cancer in female dogs, and they showed in their initial work that the later you got your dog sterilised, the higher the risk. And that it was, if you got your dog sterilised before their first heat, when they're 4 or 5 months old, it was about a 1 in 200 chance they would get breast cancer. If you let them get to about 2 years old, so not even an old dog, but just basically once they've had a few heats, then it was, depending on the breed, ballpark 10%, which is about the same risk for women. So that study got way over-emphasised. And there's been others along the way as well, but the bottom line is there is actually still no solid research, and we get into the nitty-gritty of how you do statistics and all of that to explain this, but the bottom line is it is arguable still as to what the real impact of sterilising a female dog is whether it does actually reduce the risk of breast cancer is not absolutely rock solid certain. So the importance of this, I guess, is the first thing is there an advantage in sterilising a female dog for breast cancer? And it's arguable would be the best way. Meaning, if you wanted to keep your dog entire, then I don't think anyone can tell you, well, you know, you're going to make sure they get breast cancer if you don't do that. So you've got a bit more freedom to say, well, actually, no, I'm not going to sterilise her, and I'm not going to sterilise her just yet. In the boys, one of the biggest mistakes out there with male dogs is prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is not prevented by castration and never was suspected to be prevented by castration. It's a different disease to the prostate cancer in men. What we now know over the last couple of decades is the research actually shows the opposite, that castration probably increases the risk of prostate cancer, not decreases it. Then we move from sort of male and female type cancers to just general cancers. One of the problems with, or not one of the problems, one of the effects of sterilising your dog is it does interfere with how their bones form. Okay? Usually not to the point it's a problem, but they do have a higher risk of joint injuries, and there is emerging evidence, by no means definitive, that their risk of bone cancer may increase as a result. There was a very famous survey done in Rottweilers which showed dramatic benefits. The survey was heavily flawed in how it was done, so again, statistical stuff not really relevant for today. But the bottom line is at least there is some evidence to suggest that maybe sterilising your dog is going to increase the risk of cancer. Now, it's not the whole issue, okay? If making a choice about sterilising your dog focuses purely on what the risk of a particular cancer is, I think there's bigger issues at stake. And there is, if your dog is ever free roaming, then obviously you don't want to be responsible for bringing puppies into the world that might need to be put down. Okay? So there's bigger issues there. There's behavioural issues. Some male dogs certainly are going to be far easier to control if they are sterilised. So I don't want to put anyone off it. But to answer the question, yes, there are concerns that sterilising your dog may not have any benefits in preventing cancer that certainly going back 20 or 30 years ago were almost assumed. And secondly, there may be some cancers, and I've only mentioned a couple. There's also concerns about lymphoma and mast cell tumours, more in the females. But the bottom line is there is growing concern that there might be some increase in risk for some cancers because of sterilisation. So there's not enough to make an informed decision on the point of me saying, well, you've got a 22.7% chance of problems if you do this. I don't know yet. But I think it is relevant if you can take care of your dog, meaning they're not a risk to breeding with other dogs, that you can handle their behaviour to avoid sterilising at least until they're fully mature. And what some people are choosing to do is, instead of castration, is to get a vasectomy, same as men get when they don't want to produce any more children. Same process, exactly the same surgery, but basically the testicles are left on. And then if you want, you can get them castrated once they're mature. And with female dogs, I don't know if many people are doing this, but I've certainly heard some people requesting an ovary as left behind. So the normal process, if you're not aware, when your dog has a hysterectomy to be sterilised, standard sterilisation procedure is the uterus and both ovaries are removed. And the uterus is removed, obviously. The ovaries, by removing them, means you don't have any problems with dogs coming into heat in terms of their behaviour, attracting other dogs, all that sort of thing. So if you choose not to sterilise your dog, be aware there's a whole lot you need to look into. But the question is valid. There may well be an increase in risk of some cancer because of sterilising.
That is the exact opposite of what everybody gets told.
Exactly. Yes. Completely correct. And some of this is relatively new, but again, not to criticise the profession, but I've certainly, when I've been on hold to some vet clinics, I've heard their voice message data telling you to get your male dog sterilised to reduce prostate cancer, and that's certainly never been suspected.
Yeah, I was wondering, with their diet, like I feed my dog because of his weight problem, mainly dry food and veggies. So is there do's and don'ts with diet?
Okay, so what do we, from a cancer perspective, what do we feed our dogs? Which is also another doozy of a question. If any of you type that into the internet, within about 10 minutes you'll be pretty much certain that you're causing cancer, and if your dog is unlucky enough to have cancer, you'll be certain that your diet is making it worse. What we do know, in terms of preventing cancer, then, and this is stretching beyond what's certain, but nonetheless, I think in terms of preventing cancer, specifically the best diet is going to be a mixture of meat and a large range of vegetables. Okay? Now, dogs are not carnivores, they're omnivores, same as us, so they need a little bit more protein, but it's rare that any of you are going to be having a diet that's borderline in protein. So what looks good for a person, roughly speaking, is going to be good for a dog. So a serving of meat with a large amount of vegetables, or at least when I'm saying what looks good to you, what you know you should be eating, whether it's what you are eating is another matter. So good mixture of vegetables. The classic ones to avoid that are different for dogs are onion, garlic, and raisins, grapes, are things that you need to keep out of there. But a good mixture of general vegetables, whether you cook them, basically cook them to make them edible. So, you know, if for my dog he likes raw carrot, I'm not going to bother cooking it just for the sake of it. But there's no way he'll take broccoli unless it's cooked to within an inch of its, you know, existence and mixed through stew. So, you know, so do what you need to do basically to get them to eat it. A lot of the stuff that you'll probably have in your head that cooking vegetables, what it does to its nutritional value, is actually rubbish. You get very close to the nutritional value out of vegetables with microwaving, with cooking. You do reduce it somewhat, but it's not anywhere near what most people think. So do what you need to do to make it edible. The downside of that is that there's the trust element, I guess, in yourself that you're going to be feeding everything they need, and let alone the time that I'm going to now have you preparing your dog's meal. And so that's where the commercial food comes in. Now, if you're going to feed just commercial food, then it should be, I think, top shelf stuff. If you want something to remember, look for what's called AFCO testing, AAFCO, which means that they've actually got a group of dogs, fed them that diet and proved that they stayed healthy. Okay, so it's a bit of reassurance that that food is actually good. So you can go anywhere from one extreme of making the diet yourself, which I think from a cancer prevention point of view is probably smarter, or just for practical realities, and to be frank, I'm in this boat, is commercial food just makes things so much easier. There's no evidence that commercial foods cause cancer. There certainly are plenty of things in there that theoretically might, just the same as you know, any of you who ever have a blue Smartie. You know, you're taking stuff into your body which is a proven carcinogen, but when you step out into the sun, you're stepping out into radiation that's a proven carcinogen as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is don't go home and freak out that you can't feed anything commercial or what have you. Just be sensible. If you're using mostly commercial food, use very good stuff. If you're mixing a bit in because of, you know, meat, veggies and then a bit of dry food or something, then it's probably less critical what brand it is. So the second part, though, then is if we move to what do you feed your dog with cancer, and that's where things get well, as far as the internet's concerned, really quite nasty. If you look on the internet about diets for the dogs with cancer, they'll all talk about carbohydrate. You've got to avoid carbohydrate. It'll make the cancer grow. It'll make it worse. It's all rubbish. There's been good work to show that's definitely not the case. Again, more information than any of you want to know, but the reason that carbohydrate recommendation is out there is cancers need a lot of DNA. They're dividing rapidly, they're making new cells all the time, and they need to make DNA. The pathway that they use to get energy from carbohydrate gives them that DNA as an offshoot sort of the pathway. So cancers choose to use the particular carbohydrate pathway because it works best for them. People have taken that snippet of information and then assumed, right, if you feed less carbohydrate, cancer won't grow. The fact is, if you feed less carbohydrate, you're still going to have carbohydrate in your blood. If you don't you die within about 3 seconds. So your brain can't survive without sugar. Basically, your cancer will just use what's in the blood, whether you feed it or not. So the only thing I would say about carbohydrate in dogs is why we're bothering to feed carbohydrate to dogs. There's no need for it. Rice is just calories, and you're far better off feeding meat and veggies where the calories have got something good in it. So I'm not a fan of feeding lots of carbohydrate to dogs, whether that's pasta or rice, but not because I believe it has any influence on the growth rate of cancer, simply because I think if I'm going to feed calories, I might as well put actual nutrition in there with those calories.
My dog won't eat rice or vegetables, they will eat only fresh chicken.
That's an excellent point. So the quick answer, commercial food.
I don't feed the commercial food.
The commercial food is better than just chicken. That's your first thing, okay? Dogs are not carnivores, so they cannot get everything they need from meat. Sorry?
They dictate to me what they will eat. He goes days.
And dogs will dictate to you the same as children will. You know, if I'm not firm on my children, they're going to eat ice cream.
Even since he was like
And there's a couple of issues. One is it's hard. You know, I'm not saying that you need to struggle every day to work a way around this. I don't want things to be difficult for you, but dogs don't know what's good for them any better than we do. They're not eating chicken because they're missing some chickenness in their body. You know, they're eating chicken because it tastes really good, and they know if they don't eat the chicken, yeah, exactly. And if they don't eat the chicken, then they know there'll be chicken the next day, and so they'll just refuse what's in the meantime. So dogs that are really food-driven will eat anything because they've got to get something into their body. Dogs that are less will happily or very quickly learn that they can manipulate you by refusing to eat food because they know you're going to give in before they get really hungry. So I don't have a solution for you on that, but certainly my personal opinion is if I had a choice of feeding just chicken or a good commercial food, I would go with good commercial food without fail, without question. Okay?
the only one that I've managed to get beat, I don't know if it's relevant or not, is a particular type of my dog. It's one I've tried many times to introduce different things into his diet. It's just so frustrating because he's so skinny.
No, and my dog's the same. Mine's I've got a 20 kilo Kelpie cross, so you kind of think he should, you know, he runs non-stop, so he should be hungry. And he'll eat tasty stuff like home-cooked food, but as far as commercial food goes, he won't touch that. What I feed him when I don't have the home-cooked stuff, what I feed him is cat food. Cat food is fine for dogs. Dog food is not fine for cats. Okay, so cats have a much higher dietary sort of requirement in terms of specifics than dogs do. So it's yes. So you can feed a dog cat food. If it's the dry food, it's very energy dense. So if you've got a dog that's gaining weight, obviously you feed it too much. But yes, it is okay to feed cat food to a dog. And it's because it's a high quality food in terms of meat content and so forth, the dogs prefer the taste of it. So, you know, there's no benefit. I don't want you guys to go home and suddenly start feeding cat food. But yeah, if you've got a fussy dog and you want a commercial solution, then yeah, cat food. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there an increased risk of male being
Sorry, I missed that. Is there an increased risk?
of a cryptid male being hepatitis?
Is there an increased risk of a cryptorchid male being kept entire? Testicles are meant to be on the outside. So the question is, if you've got, what should you do essentially if you've got a dog with a testicle retained in the abdomen? It's an abnormal position. They have a much higher risk of turning cancerous, and that I would remove. So if you were keen on castration, then yes. If you were wanting to avoid castration, then you could have just, if it's a single testicle inside the belly, then have that removed and leave the one on the outside. All right, I'm being thrown off.